The innocent liar. This level represents the most common and socially accepted form of deception. This person bends the truth not to manipulate, but to protect others from hurt or to keep social interaction smooth and conflict-free. These are the classic white lies, like telling a friend you love their terrible haircut or pretending you're having a great time at a boring party. The goal here is pure harmony and empathy, treating deception as a form of social grease. However, even though these lies are harmless in isolation, relying on them too often creates a massive gap between your true feelings and the version of yourself you present to the world. A perfect example is the character of Marshall Erickson from How I Met Your Mother, who occasionally panics and tells terrible, innocent lies just because he absolutely hates hurting anyone's feelings.
The avoidant liar, a person who uses deception as an emergency exit from accountability. This type lies specifically to escape negative consequences, heavy responsibilities, or deeply uncomfortable situations. Instead of facing a problem directly, they invent elaborate excuses or subtly shift the blame to someone else just to dodge immediate stress. You see this constantly in everyday life, like making up a sudden family emergency to explain a missed deadline, or avoiding a difficult conversation with a partner. Over time, this defense mechanism completely destroys a person's credibility because it replaces real maturity and accountability with a predictable pattern of running away. A great example is the iconic character of Ferris Bueller, who maps out an entire complex web of lies just to avoid going to school and dodge the consequences of playing hooky.
The exaggerator. Someone who doesn't replace reality entirely, but stretches it like a rubber band to make their life look much more interesting, dramatic, or impressive than it actually is. They inflation their achievements, inject wild details into stories that never actually happened, and turn minor inconveniences into grand, epic tragedies. Underneath this habit is a deep, burning need for attention, validation, and social approval. While they can be incredibly entertaining storytellers at a party, this pattern quickly leads to a massive credibility crisis once the people around them start noticing the glaring inconsistencies in their tales. A flawless pop culture match is Usopp from the anime One Piece, who constantly cooks up wild, impossible lies about his legendary achievements and grand adventures just to hide his insecurities and gain the respect of his crew.
The manipulative liar. Now we cross into much more calculated territory with the manipulative liar. This person intentionally and strategically distorts reality to pull the strings on other people's thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Their lies are never impulsive. They are carefully weaponized to gain total control, personal benefit, or an unfair advantage over a situation. This looks like guilt tripping, twisting established facts, or deliberately hiding crucial pieces of information to make you doubt your own sanity. Unlike the harmless white lies of the innocent liar, this type is deeply toxic and leaves a trail of psychological damage in both relationships and work environments. Think of the brilliant but dangerous character of Amy Dunne from the movie Gone Girl, who orchestrates a flawlessly deceptive master plan, manipulating the media and the police to completely rewrite reality.
The habitual liar. The habitual liar operates on pure muscle memory. For this person, deception has become an automatic reflex rather than a conscious, calculated choice. They lie regularly, casually, and often without any clear benefit, motive, or reason at all. It is built into their daily communication style, meaning they will lie about what they ate for breakfast just as easily as they would about a major life event. Over time, the lines in their own brain blur so severely that they struggle to separate real life from the fiction they've spun. This pattern usually develops as a deeply ingrained survival mechanism from a past environment where lying was the only way to feel safe or rewarded. A perfect example is the character of Barney Stinson, whose default setting is to create elaborate personas and fake histories for himself, lying completely automatically out of habit.
The defensive liar. This level introduces the defensive liar, someone whose deception is entirely driven by an intense fear of criticism, judgment, and failure.
When faced with a mistake, a flaw, or potential negative evaluation, their immediate instinct is to deny it, rewrite the truth, or reshape the facts to make themselves look perfectly competent and in control. This type of lying is a fragile shield built to protect a highly insecure self-image. It shows up most frequently in high-pressure school or corporate environments where admitting a mistake feels like it carries an existential cost. A great real-world reflection of this is the character of Michael Scott from The Office, who constantly tells desperate, defensive lies whenever his competence is questioned, completely unable to handle the idea of people seeing him fail.
The strategic liar. The strategic liar treats deception like a high-stakes game of chess, using lies as cold, calculated tools to achieve long-term, ambitious goals. Unlike the impulsive defensive liar or the chaotic habitual liar, this person plans what they are going to say, how they are going to say it, and exactly when to strike weeks or months in advance. Their lies are incredibly subtle, often mixing 90% truth with 10% carefully placed poison to shape how people perceive them over a long period. You find this type dominating, cutthroat, highly competitive corporate or political environments where influence and positioning are everything. The definitive example of this is Frank Underwood from House of Cards, who carefully crafts an immaculate public persona, using calculated, long-term deception to ruthlessly climb his way to the top of the political ladder.
The pathological liar. At the absolute extreme of the spectrum sits the pathological liar. This is a compulsive, chronic condition where the act of lying is entirely disconnected from reality and logic. They weave massive, highly elaborate, and deeply persistent webs of fiction, even when telling the absolute truth would be infinitely easier and more beneficial to their lives. There is no clear, rational motivation for their deception. It is driven by deep, underlying psychological patterns that demand the creation of a completely alternative reality. Trying to build a relationship or maintain trust with a pathological liar is practically impossible, as their version of the truth shifts by the hour. A striking real-life cultural example is Frank Abagnale Jr., whose life story was captured in Catch Me If You Can, who spent years compulsively adopting fake identities, from a pilot to a doctor, living entirely inside a brilliant but relentless delusion.